and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 440, and today's date is August 13th, 2014, and the title of this episode is, Are the Riots in Ferguson Part of the U.S. Agenda for Martial Law? And we'll get into that a little bit later in this report, but let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, what we're seeing here and across Europe right now, things are not going well. We see things aren't going well in Spain, Italy, France, and Greece. Right now, Greece's economy is shrinking. Greece has the highest debt burden in the Eurozone at 174% of GDP, and pretty much the debt that they have is actually considered unsustainable in the long run. This is not really a surprise to anybody. And we can see that as time goes on, it is getting worse for these countries, not better. They're not improving. Right now, Japan, their GDP is plunging by 6.8%. Now, this is a huge drop compared to the 3.6% drop in GDP when Japan last hiked its consumption tax in 1997. Today's GDP collapse is about 6.8%. So this is a complete disaster, and consumer spending collapsed to 5.2% quarter over quarter. This is the most on record. So really, we're seeing now the ripple effect of all of these countries now starting to fall apart. Japan has been declining. The European nations, it is getting worse and worse in all of these countries. And like I said, the real economic indicators are now starting to really come out and show its ugly face. The illusionary numbers no longer matter. What we're seeing right now is everything that's been reported on, and we're continually reporting on, and they're really starting to come out onto the mainstream media. They're starting to have to acknowledge it. Yes, there's something wrong. We see housing starting to slow. I see in the corporate media they're trying to balance between why this is happening and this is really good for the economy. And of course, we all know this is not good for the economy. When everything is contracting and prices are coming down and people aren't going out and spending, this is not good for the economy. It's terrible for the economy. And we have to look at what is causing this. And when we see this, we see that, yeah, people do not have jobs. People are unemployed, they're underemployed, they're not making the same income, and things are not going well for most of the people in the United States and around the world. And this is a major factor. Now, here in the States, what we're seeing is that retail sales right now miss for the third month in a row. Retail sales miss the expectations for the third month in a row. Of course, during the first quarter, they blamed it on the weather. The second quarter, they're blaming it on the weather because it affected the warmer weather, and they try to make up all these different excuses. And really what it is people don't have the money to go out and buy things. That's really what it is. I mean, they're not going to admit to that, but they keep making up different excuses. Now, across the board, retail sales were weak with, excluding auto and gas, up only 0.1% against expectations of about 0.4% gain. Department store sales fell by 0.7% month over month. So what we're seeing right now is that retail is having a very tough time. And if we break this down, we're seeing that motor vehicle parts and dealers is down by negative 0.2%. Furniture is down by negative 0.1%. Electronics down by negative 0.1%. And of course, we have the department stores that are down negative 0.7%. And general merchandise stores are down negative 0.5%. So we can see that people really don't have the money. They don't have the disposable discretionary income to go out there and start buying all these goods. And of course, the higher price stores, they're not going to see these sales. And this is exactly what we're seeing. Again, if the economy is truly improving and the unemployment rate is truly coming down, we would see expansion, not contraction. Think about it. Last August, the unemployment rate was at 7.2%. Today, the unemployment rate is at 6.2%. Why are we seeing this contraction in real estate, retail, and pretty much everything else that we see when unemployment has come down? That means more people have work. That means more people are saving. But again, it's not fitting into the real economic indicators that we continually report on. Now, what we're seeing is that auto dealerships fell 0.2% in July after declining 0.3% the prior month. So auto sales are falling fast right now. Now, of course, you have to remember, they tried everything to get people into auto. Subprime people, they said, come on in, you got a heartbeat, we'll give you a loan. And what's happening right now, they're seeing a lot of delinquencies, we're seeing a lot of defaults on all these car loans because these people actually couldn't afford a new car. Yes, you might want a new car, and the new car looks great, and it smells great when you get in it, but guess what? You have to make the payments, and when your income can't support this, we see a lot of delinquencies. We're also seeing a lot of delinquencies because we're seeing a lot of layoffs appear right now. We are seeing a lot of corporations, major corporations, starting to lay off thousands of people, and we have more layoffs coming this fall. Now, Macy's is out there saying, listen, we're going to have to cut our full year same store sales forecast after the second quarter sales failed to make up for the weakness in the first quarter. And of course, we knew this wasn't going to happen. This whole GDP of going up by 6.1%, of course at 4%, then we were down negative 2.1%. All of this is made up, manipulated. I mean, look what we're seeing here. And right now they're saying, okay, we thought we were going to have an increase of about 2.5% to 3%. They've lowered it from to 1.5% to 2% now, and it might even go a little bit lower than that. But Terry Lundgren, the chief executive, said many customers still are not feeling comfortable about spending more in an uncertain economic environment. Yeah, Terry, what's happening here is people are being laid off. Once they're laid off, they can't find jobs. Those people have not found any jobs since 2008, 2009, 2010, are continually trying to figure out how they're going to survive. And more people are coming into the unemployment arena here, and they don't have the money. And if they do find a job, they're underemployed. Their salaries are lower. They're getting the part-time work. So guess what? They only want the things they actually need. And if they don't need it, they're not buying it. And this is why you're seeing sales drop. Everyone needs to start waking up and understanding what is going on here. Now, of course, the corporate media is out there, and they're using, income gap inequality about how the housing market's working. We see in the wealthy areas, housing's still going up, but in the lower income, housing is starting to move down. Well, it always pretty much starts in the lower income. And what they're saying is that the different sectors are having different experiences. And what we're seeing right now in many of the areas, the low to middle incomes, are starting to see prices level off and actually drop down now. And of course, these people are just struggling to get by, and most of the people in this area cannot buy a house. They can't go out and get a mortgage because their credit was ruined during 2008, 2009 forward, and there were so many foreclosures on the books of banks that most of the people, their credit is ruined. So right now we're seeing, and they're admitting to that, yes, they're in different areas of the country. We're seeing housing right now acting a little differently than what the government is putting out there. And we're seeing this more and more in the corporate media right now. Not right on the front page, but in little areas just to put it out there. Now, we see again, once again, U.S. home mortgages fell last week for both new purchases and refinancing. The Mortgage Bankers Association said its seasonally adjusted index of mortgage applications activity, which includes both refinancing and home purchases demand, fell by 2.7% in the week ending August 8th. Refinancing applications fell once again by 4.0%. So pretty much every week that I reported on, all we have seen is mortgage and refinance applications continually declining. This is not a good sign. And we have to remember everything leading up to this. College graduates who've been graduated since like 2009, 10, 11, 12, most of these people are having a very rough time finding work. And if they do find work, it's in a lower type of position, or they're working part-time. Most of these youths are living with their parents still. They're trying just to make ends meet. Their student loans payments are very high, and they're not in a position to buy homes right now. And when we really look at this and we look at what's been going on with the mortgage applications, and I've said this many times, if you go back to 2013, you see mortgage departments in these huge financial institutions, they already knew this was coming. This is why they were laying off people and continually laying off people, and a lot of smaller mortgage companies have already closed down. But mortgage applications in the U.S. fell to its lowest since September of 2000. This week, mortgage applications have slumped for now 9 months. And every single time I come on and I do a report, I keep repeating this. This is to show a pattern of what has been going on. Now, mortgage applications are going down. Refinancing is going down. We are in a downward trend. Americans are not going out and buying the homes. We have a major problem. And this is a huge indicator of what is happening in the economy, because if people are not making money, not buying homes, things are going to fall apart. And you have to remember, there's about $4 trillion or so on the Fed's books, and these are all toxic real estate loans, foreclosures. Think about this for a second, of where we're headed. This is going to be a major, major disaster. Now, as we know, the London silver price, the fix that there is going to be changing this Friday, it seems like there's a little confusion right now who's going to be taking control of this, and we have to watch this very, very carefully, because we might see silver shoot up. Now, do I think it's going to? Probably not. Someone will control it somehow, some way. But we might see an initial jump up, and you'll see people jump in if this does happen, saying, oh my God, silver's taking off, and then all of a sudden they'll try to bring it down to the normal level. But we'll have to watch this very carefully, and this is going to launch on Friday. Now, Russia is going to prepare a innovation finance proposal for the new BRICs banks. The Russian government will prepare proposals to finance innovative projects for the BRICs new development bank and expand Russia's cooperation with other countries in innovation and technology by November. The NDB, with the plan authorized capital of 100 billion euros, will finance infrastructure projects in the territory of BRICs member countries only. So we can see they are pushing the BRIC nation agenda here, and they're trying to get all these countries up to speed with innovation and technology, and they're really, really pushing this. And again, this is a direct threat to the Western powers. They do not want this to happen, because if the BRICs overtake the Western banking system and the Western banking system collapses, the people in Europe, in the United States, Australia, Canada, will be looking at our government officials and the central bankers saying, you did this to us, and they do not want this to happen. Now, as we know, illegals are still continually coming over the borders. They're wide open for everyone to just come on into the country. And we understand that these illegals are being spread out to about 23 different states in the United States. And they kind of match up with the quarantine centers of Ebola. Coincidence? Most likely not. But we can see right now, and I have a map on the x22report.com site. If you go to resources, map of immigrants, you can see that the map is continually updated. And if you click on these symbols, they will give you the links of where they got the information and where the drop-off was a success or the drop-off of these illegals was not a success. And you can also see the proposed drop-offs in all of these states. And you can zoom in on the maps because there's a lot of symbols now, and you can zoom in. But what we're seeing right now with the illegals is that thousands of kids who came across, which they're really teenagers, and they need to see a judge, an immigration judge. And what is happening, a lot of them are getting court dates well into the future, like 2020. But some of them have court dates right now, and their cases are being expedited, and they're going to go before immigration judge. And these judges are picked by the Obama administration. And why are these judges picked? Because they are very lenient in granting asylum to about 88% of the cases. So what we're seeing right now is these judges are being picked, and they have specific judges where they want the illegals to go in front of. So we can see this has been planned. This has totally been planned from the beginning. The first judge assigned to the so-called surge docket is Frank Loprest, an Obama administration pick who grants asylum in 88% of the cases before him. So we know right now all of these cases are going to be approved, and most of them are going to stay here. And you're going to see this percentage probably go up from 88% to about almost 100% as they say, or, of course, they probably have something on these judges, the NSA, and they're probably blackmailing them, say, listen, we need you to do this and do it. We're approving most of the people, and this is what we're going to absolutely see. Now, it seems like the situation in Ferguson is getting worse. I mean, tensions reignited once again as night fell last night. A second man was shot by police. Now, police officials are saying that the man that was shot pointed a handgun at the police around 1 a.m. on Wednesday. And again, we don't know this. This is very difficult to confirm if he really did have a gun. This is what the police are saying. But a second man was shot. And a woman is being treated in a hospital after being shot in the head during a drive-by shooting in the troubled city. Protesters exclaimed, "We have a right to assemble, a right to freedom." And this is coming from Paul Muhammad. But here we are facing what looks like a military imposing martial law. It is not acceptable. And interestingly, President Obama's official response urging reflection has been rejected as insultingly inadequate by many African American residents of Ferguson. And a convoy of about 250 young demonstrators marching along a main route in downtown Ferguson was halted about 30 yards from a wall of police assembled at the entrance to the street where Brown was killed. Officers in military-style uniforms, some carrying high-powered rifles, wearing black Kevlar, formed a line at least 2 men deep, blocking the entire width of the street. They repeatedly warned the demonstrators through a loudspeaker system to get out of the road or face arrest. So we can see right now, the town right now is completely militarized. We have police in militarized uniforms carrying high-powered weapons. They don't look like police. The only reason you know they're police because they say police on them, but otherwise, if you peel that off, they look like they're out, fighting in Afghanistan or something like that. And a lot of them are in fatigues and running around the streets. So we can see right now they are kind of bringing us into what martial law is going to look like. Now, they do have a ban on low-flying helicopters, airplanes. They banned the airspace above Ferguson, so they don't want us to see something. They don't want something to be televised. The FBI is getting involved. And we can see right now that agent provocateurs could be set up and pushed into different areas to try to create more and more riots. Now again, we can see this occurring in many different cities, and this would be an indicator that yes, this is a full-blown riot type of false flag where they would like to declare martial law. Now, what we're seeing is that what is going on is very dangerous because the police look like military. And this whole race issue that's going on right now is yet another issue that is not being addressed, that it's a militarization of the civil police forces around the country. If this is kind of rioting that can take place in a community with over about 20,000 people, what would it look like throughout the entire country, in cities with millions? Just think about this. This is just a small little snapshot of what is going on. Bring it out to the rest of the country, into big cities and seeing the armed tanks rolling in with the military forces coming out. Now, there is a former Marine, Paul, I'm going to try to pronounce his last name here, Soldra. He's warning that the events in Ferguson, Missouri illustrate the terrifying result of the militarization of police, with the American people now being treated like insurgents in Afghanistan and Iraq. He said that he's questioning why police in Ferguson are wearing combat gear such as desert camouflage, which is normally reserved for troops fighting in foreign war zones, which I completely agree. What is the purpose in this? Well, we kind of know what the purpose is. We looked intimidating, but all of our vehicles and equipment had a clear purpose for combat against enemy forces. So why is this same gear being used on our streets today? The former Marine notes how police in Ferguson are armed with military-style rifles with scopes as well as body armor. In Afghanistan, we patrolled in big armored trucks. We wore uniforms that conveyed the message: we are a military force and we are in control right now. Many Afghans saw us as occupiers, and now we see some of our police officers in the same exact way. He pretty much said that, listen, there is no reason for the police to be in this type of garb, but the reason they are is to convince us and to continually brainwash and get us used to the military taking control of our streets. And you have to remember, DHS right now is dormant. DHS has infiltrated all the local law enforcement by giving them gifts and grants and tanks and electronic surveillance equipment and machine guns and these uniforms. They will come into compliance with DHS, and when this goes down, DHS will be activated. You will not recognize DHS. They will be a different type of animal. All local law enforcement then will come in compliance and join in with DHS. This is how they created the force inside the United States to control the masses. So we can see that this is really building up right now, and we're going to have to watch what is going on in Ferguson very, very closely. Now, this could be one or two things. Just like we saw in the Boston bombing, where we saw the military on the streets, getting us used to tanks on the streets, military men on the streets. This could be another operation where they just want to get everyone used to seeing this. Now, if this breaks out into more and more cities, then we have the indication that, no, they're taking this to a much, much bigger campaign, and this would turn into a false flag to get martial law pretty much going here inside the United States. Now, Ecuador is out there, and they are saying we don't need the permission to trade with Russia, because right now the EU is trying to control Latin America, because you have to remember, the European Union is losing tremendous number of sales to Russia right now because of the agricultural ban, the food ban that Russia placed on all the Western nations. And right now the EU is sitting there going, what are we going to do? And if Latin America takes up the slack, we'll be cut out of this completely. And we can see right now that Ecuador saying, listen, you can't tell any of us what to do. We're not part of the EU. We're not working with you. And if we want to do business with Russia, we will do business with Russia. And Russia is seeking, out new suppliers to fill the gap of the banned agricultural products. And they're looking at many, many different nations right now. Now, the Financial Times reported the EU is allegedly working to try and convince Brazil, Chile, and other Latin American countries not to meet Russia's demand for agricultural products. EU countries could be left with a large amount of produce that aren't able to sell. Russia imports roughly 30% of its food supply from Europe, so the sudden halt could be a big blow to the 28-nation bloc. Yeah, it's going to be a big blow. Actually, it's going to escalate the economic collapse in all of these nations. Now, these nations are hurting right now. It is going to increase this 10 times right now, and this is why the United States, the European Union are preparing and getting ready for the bail-ins. They've already said they've done the simulations. They already know that they're ready to do this. We already know Germany's given the blessing. We already know they're provoking war across in Eastern Europe with Ukraine, in the Pacific, in the Middle East, and Africa. And they're going to really ramp this up as time goes on. Now, Spain is having a problem here because of the Russian ban on food. Spain will meet with the EU officials Thursday to discuss offsetting the country's estimated €337 million in food and agricultural losses due to blocked access to the Russian market. A quarter of Spain's €111 million meat exports were bound for Russia until the ban, and it will be difficult for Spanish farmers and meat producers to quickly find alternative markets. Now, of course, Spain is reeling from a huge recession/depression. Italy is feeling the same, Greece, Cyprus, Portugal, France, and this is going to spread throughout Europe. And you have to remember, these countries were already collapsing. This is just speeding it up right now. And this is the boomerang effect. Now, it looks like the United States signed a 25-year military pact with Australia. The United States and Australia finalized a 25-year deal to more than double the number of American troops training with their Aussie counterparts in a significant step forward for the Obama administrations to pretty much rebalance or contain the Asia-Pacific area, actually to contain China. That's really what's happening here. And of course, again, this is another step towards World War III. They are preparing, and they do this on purpose. Now, coming out of the Pentagon, it looks like the Pentagon has confirmed they are sending massive amounts of new tanks and armored vehicles to the Norwegian countryside to be stashed inside a series of caves in case the U.S. wants to use them in wars in the region. Well, this is very interesting. They had military assets in these caves already. This was during the Cold War. They're taking those out, and they're increasing the number of tanks, military assets in these caves, and they're spreading it out through Europe. And this plan is part of the program called Marine Corps Pre-Positioning Program. And, gee, you think this is about preparing for World War III? This is exactly what they're doing. So every time we report on this, we can see more military assets, more deals containing China, containing Russia. It's all starting to ramp up. Now, Russia is having military exercises in the Kuril Islands claimed by Japan. Russia began military exercises in the island in the Pacific Ocean, and there's about 1,000 troops, about 5 attack helicopters, and other pieces of military hardware out there. And supposedly they're having the drills in the northern area where they're saying that Russia actually owns these islands, but Japan, of course, is out there saying, no, we have these islands, and they want confirmation that, they're not going towards Japan's islands. And you can see this is all about Japan now going up there and provoking Russia and saying, we need information from you, from Russia, that you are not in our area. And we can see this is all about provoking and trying to make it look like that Russia is trying to do something when they aren't. Just like they keep saying that Russia has troop buildup on the border of Ukraine. And talking about that, the OSCE again, the OSCE observers said that no, we cannot find any troop buildup on the border of Ukraine and Russia right now. So all this propaganda from the corporate media from Ukraine is completely false. Now, there were certain problems because Russia made a deal with the Red Cross where they're going to bring humanitarian aid in, and of course Kiev and the United States government was making it very difficult. They wanted to unload the trucks, load the trucks, they wanted to change the license plates, and it looks like right now that the Ukrainian government will ensure the safe delivery of humanitarian aid from Russia to war-torn southeastern Ukraine. Ukraine provides the humanitarian cargo convoy safe passage to the destination point. At the same time, the country's Interior Minister, Arsen Avakov, said that Ukraine would not allow a Russian convoy of humanitarian aid to pass through the eastern Kharkiv region. So, again, we're having a little bit of a problem. And, of course, Marie Harf is out there. This is the U.S. State Department deputy spokeswoman. She's saying that as long as Russia follows all of Kiev's uh, uh, conditions, everything should be fine. Well, Russia said, yes, we agree to everything, just bring the humanitarian aid to where it's supposed to go. Now, in Ukraine right now, as we know, the currency is collapsing. And what they're saying is that because of the plummeting currency and deteriorating growth outlook, it could balloon the embattled country's emergency bailout cost by nearly $10 billion. So the IMF has had to revise its assumptions since April as an intensifying war against Russia-backed separatists in the east. A major manufacturing region changed the country's growth outlook and fueled state spending for the military campaign. Of course, this is going to get worse. Basically, Ukraine is collapsing. They lost Crimea. They lost the southeastern section. They have the worthless West. And pretty much debt is being piled on top of Ukraine. They have no gas. Their currency is collapsing. People are continually rioting in Ukraine. And this is not going well at all. Now, Iran's supreme leader rejects all talks with U.S. They're saying that negotiations won't help anything. Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei categorically rejected all negotiations with the United States, saying that talks are dangerous to Tehran and won't help anything. He said that on Wednesday that negotiations with the United States don't have any benefits for Iran and rejected the prospect of further discussions. Recent negotiations between the United States and Iran on its nuclear program have proved that no issues will be settled. And what's happening here is that every time the United States meets with the P5+1, the United States continually changes the agreement, and they're never satisfied with it. And they want Iran to do a little bit more. They want to bring in something else that wasn't really in the initial agreement, and they continually do this because they don't want this to work out. Their whole agenda is to get into their banking system. And right now we can see that this might be breaking apart. We'll have to see how this goes. But it seems like Iran is getting fed up, and of course the way it's going to look. And again, this comes back to the bullying factor. You're in talks and you keep changing the agreement, you keep adding things, you keep changing it, and Iran says, okay, we'll do that, no, we won't do this, oh, we'll do that, and you keep doing this and you never come to any type of conclusion, and finally Iran says, okay, enough of this, we can't deal with the United States because they're never satisfied. Okay, then the United States turns around and says, aha, Iran doesn't want to have the talks, they backed out. They want their nuclear weapons, and you can see how this is being done right now. I mean, you can see the agenda. It's the same thing that's going on in Ukraine with Russia. It's the same thing that's going on in the Pacific, and it's going on pretty much everywhere at this point because they need to provoke some type of war. Now, it looks like Libya's parliament is pretty much seeking out UN aid. They're out there calling for international help. And they're calling on the United Nations right now to protect civilians. So they're going the route where they're saying that the tribes inside of Libya are rising up, they're taking back the country, and the government is using the case that we need to protect the civilians, so we need to make a call to the UN. Now you have to remember, in the War Times Power Act, the president could go into Libya if they get permission from the UN. It's either congressional approval, or the United States is attacked, or the UN gives permission to do so. So right now, we can see how this is playing out. Libya is appealing to the UN, and they might say, okay, the US and other countries can go into Libya to help the civilians, and this is how they get boots on the ground right off the bat. Now, out in Iraq, Maliki is pretty much holding on and saying, listen, what they're doing is completely unconstitutional. They're constitutional violations, and I am not leaving my position. Right now, the Federal Supreme Court Wednesday has received a complaint made by the Prime Minister al-Maliki against the process of assigning the new Prime Minister to form a new government. And he's saying that this is completely unconstitutional, and he is still fighting it right now. Now, it looks like the European Union said, okay, you can supply weapons to the Iraqi Kurds, but we're not going to come together as a group. If individual nations would like to go ahead and supply armament, that is fine, because most of the countries were not agreeing on what they should do. A lot of them didn't want to send any type of military assets to Iraq, and some did. So basically, the EU just said, go ahead. If you want to do it, do it. And if you don't want to do it, that is also fine. Now, the Pentagon is out there, and they finally defined what this bombing was all about. So, of course, we thought they were in there dropping humanitarian aid, which we saw that they did, and they were bombing to keep, ISIL back, and now they're coming out saying that the U.S. air campaign against the Islamic State of Iraq was limited to protecting American troops in northern Iraq. I thought the advisors were in Baghdad protecting the embassy there. I didn't know we had troops in northern Iraq, but I guess we do. And they said we needed the bombing to protect the 200 Americans that are there. Well, were they really in danger? Well, they keep changing their story of exactly what they were doing, and they really can't explain it. And when they were called on it, they had to come up with this type of explanation, but a lot of it's not making sense. Now, the Pentagon also came out and said that the Islamic State has not used any air defense weapons against the U.S. Air Force, and they don't believe that they have any type of man-pads whatsoever. Well, we kind of know that they do, because the Congress sent all these weapons down to Jordan, where they were training the Islamic State on secret bases, and they were supplying them with all this type of weaponry. We also know when the Islamic State was inside of Iraq, they've captured a lot of this equipment, and we know that they have. Now, the reason why they're not firing on the U.S. Air Force is because they were instructed not to do this by the U.S. Because, they're not going to down a plane here. So we can see all of this, of what they're saying, is really not making sense. Now, of course, our government officials are out there who've been telling us that there's going to be absolutely no boots on the ground. There'll be no soldiers going in, and we see there's another 130 advisors going in there. And all of a sudden, they're talking about sending additional troops into northern Iraq to help the Yazidi refugees, and they might bring troops in to help them off Mount Sinjar. So you can call it whatever you want. These are boots on the ground. And if these troops are fired upon, they will fire back. And then all of a sudden, the administration will be out there saying, look, we're being fired upon. We need more troops in there. And this is what we call mission creep. And of course, the government's saying there is no mission creep. And it's really starting to look like, yes, they're starting to move troops into this area. Now, Edward Snowden was out there, and he came out with more information, saying that there's a cyber war program called Monstermind, which could ignite accidental conflicts. A developing U.S. cybersecurity program would not only hunt down and halt potential computer attacks, but also strike back without staff oversight, according to Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden said the program called Monstermind could hurt countries caught in the middle, as hackers could disguise the origin of their attacks by routing them through computers in other nations. Now, I've discussed this many, many times, especially when the United States says, oh, China just, cyber attacked or is using cyber espionage, or Russia is cyber attacking or planted malware or a digital bomb inside the financial institutions. Oh, it was Syria that was hitting the financial institutions and websites. Again, here is more proof. It doesn't matter where the attacks are coming from. Those are the last entry and the last servers they came from. And this goes on to say that these attacks can be spoofed. You could have someone sitting in China, for example, making it appear that one of these attacks is originating in Russia, and then we end up shooting back at Russian hospital, and what happens next? So, again, this is what he's saying, and I've said this in the past. The United States could bounce it off, Australia, Sweden, Egypt, and then end up in China. And all of a sudden, hey, China's attacking us. This is why they can't stop spammers. This is why they have a tough time really trying to stop actual people who are hacking, because professionals and professional actors or countries, they know how to work this. They know exactly what to do. I mean, I'm a small little guy here, and I know that I can take a proxy server, and there's many out on the net. You can just look them up, and you can go through them and go to a website, and it will appear that I'm looking at their website from a different country. Now, can you imagine what a major actor could do? And we can see that all of this is going to be faked, and this is what we call a false flag, where the United States is going to say, we were just cyber attacked from Russia, China, Syria, Iraq. They hit the financial institution. And of course, they're going to blame it on another country, but originated here in the United States. And you can see how this is all playing out. Now, let's move on to Ebola. And it looks like the Spanish priest, which is the first man to die with in Ebola in Europe, he was given the ZMapp vaccine, and it didn't work. So now they're continually testing people in Africa. Of course, they have free test subjects down there, and they're testing it to see if it does work. So as of right now, we don't know if this ZMapp actually does work or not. Now, we can see that they've been playing this up, the Ebola scare, and we can see that the quarantine centers have been opening up. Now, we have to really look at the big picture here, and we have to see that, is this for an outbreak of Ebola to declare medical martial law, or is this another stepping stone for when they actually release something? Because this could be saying, listen, see, we're brainwashing the people once again. We're trying to create this vaccine. We have a small company. A lot of the government officials are vested in it. They have stock in it, and they really want this to go live because they'll make fortunes. Down the line, later, all of a sudden, there's an outbreak of this Ebola virus once again, and we just so happen to have the vaccination, and we would like everyone to be vaccinated. Or they can say, to be safe right now, please vaccinate your family, just to be safe. And of course, we don't know what's in these vaccines. We have no idea if it actually gives you Ebola or not, or are there other chemicals inside of this which will do other things to you, and we don't know that right now. Now, it looks like ISIS is continuing with their threat. They have not stopped. They made another video, and they're saying that ISIS, the Islamic State, is saying all different things, saying that they're going to attack the United States. One of the quotes is, "I swear to Allah, we will divide America in two." And this is coming from a child who's so-called part of the Islamic State. And he looked around 12 years old. And they said, "We will destroy the enemies of the religion, all of them, all who fight the Islamic State. We promise car bombs and explosives. We have broken America in two, and we have annihilated the countries of Europe." And they're continually pushing this out there, and they're continually pushing the threats because they need Americans and the people in Europe and other countries to be convinced that the Islamic State will lash out and rain terror down on the countries. And of course, we know this will be a false flag event for us to get into war, into Syria, into Iraq, and really provoke Russia and China into doing something. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.